My name is Arthur Miller. I'm 74 years old, and the most incredible day of my life was when I arrived at my own home to discover my daughter-in-law had changed all the locks to move her parents in my place. When I tried to use my keys, they didn't work. When I rang the doorbell, my daughter-in-law's father answered as if he owned the place. "Arthur, Patricia told us you don't live here anymore. We've moved in for good." What he didn't know was that I had an ace up my sleeve that was about to turn his newfound comfort into the biggest legal nightmare of his life. Imagine the scene. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was coming back from my weekly grocery run, my arms heavy with bags, just wanting to relax in my armchair after 40 years of honest work. I get to the front door of the house I bought with the sweat of my brow. I put the key in the lock, just as I've done thousands of times. And it doesn't go in. I try the back door key. That doesn't work either. I try the key to the garage gate. Nothing. I thought maybe I'd grabbed the wrong set of keys by mistake, that I'd absent-mindedly picked up some others. But no, they were my usual keys, on the keychain my late wife Rose had given me. That's when I realized something was terribly wrong. I rang the bell to my own house, and Robert, my daughter-in-law Patricia's father, answered, dressed in pajamas and slippers, as if he were the lord of the manor. "Arthur, what are you doing here?" he asked, as casually as could be. "What do you mean, what am I doing here?" "I live here, Robert. This is my house." "No, Arthur." Patricia explained everything. "You've moved into a retirement home and asked us to look after the house. We've already brought all our things." In that moment, I understood the full scale of what was happening. My daughter-in-law, Patricia, taking advantage of my son Stephen being away on a 2-week business trip, had executed a plan she'd been preparing for months. Change the locks, install her parents in my house, and leave me literally on the street. But what Patricia didn't know, what Robert didn't know, what no one in that illegally occupied house knew, was that I had all the legal documents that would turn their home invasion into a judicial problem that would haunt them for years. That afternoon, standing on the sidewalk in front of my own house with grocery bags in my hands, I made the decision that would forever change the fate of everyone involved in this hostile takeover. I took out my phone and dialed the number that would begin the most explosive legal battle my family had ever seen. Listen to my story to the end and tell me what you would have done in my place. Also, let me know what city you're watching from, because what I'm about to tell you will make you understand why you should never mess with a man who knows his rights and knows how to enforce them. To understand how we reached this extreme situation, I have to tell you the story from the beginning, because my daughter-in-law, Patricia, wasn't always the shameless usurper who changed the locks on my house. When my son Stephen introduced me to her 10 years ago, she seemed like a polite, hardworking girl with good manners. Stephen worked as an engineer for an oil company and met Patricia at a professional training. She was a CPA with her own firm, managing the finances for several small businesses. I liked her from the start because she spoke respectfully, asked about my work, and seemed interested in our family stories. When they got married, I offered to let them live in my house while they saved up for their own. It's a big house with 4 bedrooms, and after Rose passed away, it felt far too empty for just me. I thought it would be nice to have company, especially if grandchildren came along. The first few years were good. Patricia kept her job, contributed to household expenses, and cooked for everyone on Sundays. Stephen was happy because he could save almost his entire salary without paying rent. I was happy because the house felt alive again after years of silence. But things started to change when Patricia lost some major clients at her accounting firm. The competition had gotten fierce, with larger firms offering the same services for less. Slowly, she lost business until she decided to close her firm. "Arthur," she told me when she made the decision, "I'm going to take some time to rethink my career. Maybe I should look for a salaried position instead of being independent." It seemed reasonable to me. Times were tough for everyone, and she had worked honestly for years. I thought she'd take a few months to find something new and then start contributing financially again. But months went by, and Patricia didn't find a job. "The market is really tough," she'd explain. "Companies want a lot of experience with systems I don't use, or the salaries they offer are too low for the level of responsibility." After a year of not working, Patricia had settled into a very comfortable routine. She'd wake up late, have a leisurely breakfast after I'd already gone out to run my errands. She'd spend the morning watching TV or browsing the internet. She'd eat the lunch I prepared. She'd take a nap. And when Stephen got home from work, she'd tell him all about the injustices of the job market that were preventing her from finding employment. Stephen always defended her. Dad, you don't understand how hard it is to find work. Patricia is trying, but nothing worthwhile is coming up. I could see that Patricia had gotten comfortable living without working, supported by Stephen's salary and the free housing I provided. By the second year of unemployment, things got worse. Patricia started complaining that the house was too old, that it needed renovations, that the furniture was outdated. Arthur, don't you think we could change these curtains? They're so faded. Or, this kitchen urgently needs to be modernized. Then came the decorating suggestions. Arthur, I saw some ideas in a magazine for updating houses like this one. What do you think if we start changing things little by little? They weren't suggestions, they were constant pressures for me to spend my money to modify my house according to her tastes. When I told her that renovations were expensive, and I was happy with the house as it was, Patricia would play the victim. It's just that living in such an old-fashioned place depresses me. I haven't worked in 2 years. I spend all day here. I need the environment to be more cheerful. That's when I began to understand that Patricia wasn't really looking for a job. She was looking for ways to turn my house into her house, to make me the financier of her responsibility-free lifestyle. The straw that broke the camel's back was when her parents started visiting every weekend. Robert and Stella lived in a small apartment downtown, but since Patricia had settled comfortably into my home, they discovered it was much more pleasant to spend their weekends in a big house with a yard. Arthur, Patricia said, my parents are getting older and their apartment doesn't have good ventilation. Do you mind if they come spend the weekends here? They'll help with the cleaning and cooking. At first, I didn't mind. They were people like me. I understood they wanted to be more comfortable. But the weekends stretched. First, they'd stay until Monday, then Tuesday. Eventually, they were staying all week and only going back to their apartment to get clean clothes. My house had become a family boarding house run by Patricia. She organized the meals, decided what shows we watched on TV, set schedules for the bathroom, and assigned chores. I was a guest in my own home. When I told Steve the situation was getting out of hand, his response cut me deep. Dad, Patricia is making a huge effort to keep the house running. Her parents help a lot. Don't you think it's selfish to complain when you have so much company? Selfish. My own son called me selfish for not wanting my house to be invaded by the parents of his unemployed wife. Things worsened when Patricia started making changes to the house without consulting me. She changed the living room curtains, replaced the dining room furniture, and installed a new TV in the master bedroom, which was my room. Arthur, these changes were necessary. The house looked so dreary. She justified every change as a necessary improvement, but every change erased a trace of Rose, of our history together, of the 30 years we had lived in that house. The breaking point came 3 months ago when Stephen announced he had to travel to Europe for work for 2 weeks. Dad, it's a really important opportunity for my career. The company is sending me to oversee some installations in Norway. I told him it was no problem, that Patricia and I would get along fine in his absence. But Patricia had other plans. The second day after Stephen left, Patricia made a proposal that left me cold. Arthur, I've been talking with my parents, and we think it would be a good idea for you to consider moving into an assisted living facility. We can stay here and take care of the house. What? I asked, unable to believe what I was hearing. Yes, Arthur. You're getting too old to maintain such a big house. In a facility, you'll be better cared for. You'll have company your own age. You won't have to worry about chores. Patricia, this is my house. I've lived here for 30 years. I'm not going to any facility. But Arthur, let's be realistic. You can't maintain this house alone. We can take better care of it, make the improvements it needs. That's when I understood the entire plan. Patricia wanted me gone so she could have my house. She wasn't doing me a favor by suggesting a retirement home. She was kicking me out of my own home. Patricia, this conversation is over. I am not leaving my house. Arthur, don't be stubborn. It's for your own good. I'll decide what's for my own good, not you. That night, Patricia did something that confirmed her true intentions. She called her parents and told them to come immediately because, Arthur was being difficult about the house. Robert and Stella arrived the next day with suitcases, as if they were moving in for good. Arthur, Robert said, Patricia explained the situation. We can help you find a nice facility where you'll be more comfortable. I don't need anyone to find me anything. I am perfectly comfortable in my own house. But Arthur, at our age, we can't handle these responsibilities anymore. It's better to be somewhere they can take care of us. It was unbelievable. Patricia's parents had come to convince me to leave my house so they could take my place. Over the next few days, the pressure was constant. Patricia showed me brochures for retirement homes. Her parents told me stories of acquaintances who were supposedly very happy in nursing homes. They had all decided I had to leave. But I had an advantage they didn't know about. I knew my legal rights perfectly. During my 40 years at a construction company, I had learned a lot about property laws, contracts, and legal procedures. On Friday afternoon, a week before Stephen was due back, I told Patricia and her parents I had to run some errands and would be back late. Take your time, Patricia replied with a smile that I now understand was one of relief. What they didn't know was that my errands consisted of a visit to my lawyer's office, Mr. Harrison, who had handled all my legal affairs for decades. Maria Buena, Mr. Harrison, I said, I have a very delicate situation at home that needs immediate legal protection. I explained everything that was happening, the pressure to leave, the gradual occupation of my space by Patricia's parents, the veiled threats about my ability to maintain the house. Arthur, Mr. Harrison told me, what you're describing could constitute several offenses: trespassing, coercion, maybe even fraud. We need to act quickly before the situation gets worse. That same afternoon, we signed a series of documents that legally protected me: a sworn affidavit about the irregular occupation of my home, a notarized statement that I had not authorized any change of locks, and a preventive request for a restraining order against anyone occupying my property without authorization. Arthur, Mr. Harrison warned me, if they change the locks while you're out, that constitutes aggravated trespassing. It's a serious offense that the police must address immediately. And what should I do if that happens? Call 911 immediately. Do not try to resolve the situation on your own. Let the law do its job. On Saturday morning, when I returned home after spending the night in a hotel to avoid more pressure, I found an envelope slipped under my door. It was a letter signed by Patricia, Robert, and Stella. Arthur, the letter read, after much reflection, we have decided that it is best for everyone if you accept our suggestion to move into a retirement home. We will handle all the arrangements and expenses. The house will be in good hands until Stephen returns. It was a declaration of war disguised as a kind letter. They were informing me that they had made the decision for me. On Sunday night, after a day of constant tension, where Patricia and her parents spoke to me as if my departure was a foregone conclusion, I decided it was time to execute my defense plan. Patricia, I said, tomorrow, Monday, I have to leave early to take care of some paperwork regarding the retirement home. I'll be out all day. It was a lie, of course. My plan was to leave early, stay nearby, watching the house, and see exactly what they did in my absence. Perfect, Arthur, Patricia replied with a triumphant smile. We'll take the opportunity to organize some things around the house. On Monday at 8 a.m., I left the house with a small suitcase, as if I were really going to a facility. But instead of leaving, I went to the coffee shop on the corner, where I had a perfect view of my house. At 10 a.m., a locksmith arrived. Patricia opened the door and they spoke for a few minutes. Then the man began to work on all the locks of the house: front door, back door, garage gate. At noon, a moving truck arrived. Patricia's parents started unloading furniture, appliances, and boxes of clothes. This wasn't a temporary move. It was a permanent one. At 2 p.m., Patricia left the house and handed a new set of keys to her father. Robert tested the keys on every door like a new owner inspecting his domain. They had executed the entire plan in one morning. Locks changed, parents moved in, keys delivered. My house was no longer my house. At 3 p.m., I walked over to confirm what I already knew. My keys didn't work. I rang the doorbell and Robert answered with the calm of a man who had not a single worry in the world, as if this was the most natural thing. That's when I pulled out my phone and dialed the number that would change everything. 911, what's your emergency? Good afternoon. My name is Arthur Miller, and I need to report a home invasion in progress. I am the legal owner of the property, and I cannot enter because they have changed the locks without my authorization. Sir, are you at the address where this is happening? Yes, I'm standing right here at my front door. The trespassers are inside. We're dispatching a patrol car right now, sir. In 10 minutes, 2 patrol cars arrived with 4 uniformed police officers. The situation had become very serious, very quickly. Are you Mr. Arthur Miller who reported the trespassing? An officer asked. Yes, officer. This has been my house for 30 years, and these individuals changed the locks to prevent me from entering. The officer in charge, a sergeant of about 45, asked to see my documentation. I pulled out the folder I had prepared with my lawyer, the deed to the house, my ID, utility bills, the sworn affidavit about the situation, and the notarized statement about the locks. The documentation is in order, the sergeant confirmed after reviewing everything. This man is indeed the legal owner of this property. We will proceed with the immediate eviction of the illegal occupants. The sergeant walked to the door and rang the bell with authority. Robert answered with the same calm demeanor as before until he saw the police uniforms. Good afternoon, I'm Sergeant Davis. We have a complaint of trespassing. Can you explain under what authorization you are occupying this residence? The color drained from Robert's face. Officer, there must be a misunderstanding. We live here with the owner's permission. Do you have any documents to prove that authorization? No, but my daughter can explain everything. Patricia appeared at the door, her face a mask of absolute panic. Officer, my father-in-law asked us to look after the house while he moves into a retirement home. Ma'am, Mr. Arthur Miller is present, and he denies giving any such authorization. Furthermore, we have legal proof that you changed the locks without his consent. But officer, he's very old. Maybe he doesn't remember correctly. Ma'am, it is not my place to evaluate the owner's mental capacity. What I have is a formal complaint of trespassing with all the legal documentation in order. The sergeant addressed all the occupants of the house. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings and vacate the premises. Any furniture or appliances you have brought in without the owner's permission must be removed immediately. Patricia tried one last resort. Officer, can't we wait for my husband to get back? He can explain everything. Ma'am, your husband is not the owner of this property. The owner is present and is requesting an immediate eviction. The next 30 minutes were a frenzy of activity. Patricia was crying while stuffing clothes into bags. Her parents were hauling furniture, confused and scared. They even had to call another moving truck to take away everything they had brought that morning. Meanwhile, I stood on the sidewalk with the sergeant, watching the plan they had so confidently executed just hours before completely fall apart. Mr. Miller, the sergeant said, do you wish to press criminal charges for trespassing? Yes, officer, I want this legally documented so it never happens again. By 5 p.m., Patricia and her parents were standing on the sidewalk with all their belongings, with nowhere to go. The locksmith had returned, this time paid for by the police with money they charged to Patricia, and had restored the original locks. Patricia, I said before she left, I hope this experience has taught you that you can't just take someone's house and think there will be no consequences. She didn't answer. She got into the taxi she had called with her parents, and they left without another word. But I knew this wasn't over. That night, alone in my reclaimed house, I called Stephen in Norway to tell him what had happened. His reaction was total shock. Dad, I can't believe what you're telling me. Patricia really changed the locks? Yes, Stephen, and she moved her parents in while trying to convince me to go to a nursing home. Dad, there has to be some misunderstanding. Patricia wouldn't do something like that. Stephen, the police have everything documented. There are criminal charges filed. It's not a misunderstanding. It's a crime. The silence on the other end of the line was long. Finally, Stephen spoke. Dad, I'm cutting the trip short. I'll be back tomorrow. There's no need, son. The situation is legally under control. But I have to talk to Patricia to understand what happened. Stephen, what happened is that your wife tried to steal my house. There's not much more to understand. 2 days later, Stephen was back, but he didn't come straight home. First, he went to find Patricia, who had taken refuge at her sister's house. When he finally arrived at my house, he was alone. Dad, I talked to Patricia. She says it was all a misunderstanding, that she really thought it was what was best for you. A misunderstanding? I asked, incredulous. Changing the locks on my house is a misunderstanding. She says you were confused about the retirement home situation. Stephen, I never agreed to go to any retirement home. Your wife made that decision for me and executed a plan to take over my house. Dad, maybe Patricia was wrong in her method, but her intentions were good. That's when I realized Stephen was trying to justify the unjustifiable. His loyalty was with his wife, not with the truth. Stephen said, I need you to understand something very clearly. Patricia is no longer welcome in this house. After what she did, she cannot live here again. But Dad, where are we going to live? We haven't paid rent for years because we've been living here with you. That's a problem you need to solve with your wife, not with me. Dad, you can't forgive Patricia. She is deeply sorry. Stephen, remorse comes after the police catch you red-handed. That's not genuine remorse. The conversation went on for hours, but I did not change my position. Patricia had crossed a line that allowed for no forgiveness. She had tried to steal my home while my son was away. The following days were filled with tense negotiations. Stephen tried to mediate between his wife and me. Patricia sent messages asking for forgiveness. Her parents called to explain they had been misinformed about the situation. But I had made a firm decision. Patricia would not set foot in my house again. 3 weeks after the incident, Stephen and Patricia had rented a small apartment. The move was sad because Stephen was taking not only his things, but also a part of our relationship. Dad, he said the day he left, I hope one day you can forgive Patricia. She made a mistake, but she's not a bad person. Stephen, what your wife did was not a mistake. It was a calculated plan to steal my house. Mistakes are unintentional. Over the following months, my relationship with my son grew cold. He would visit me alone once a week, always looking uncomfortable, always asking me to reconsider my position on Patricia. But I had learned something important. Not all family conflicts can be resolved with forgiveness and forgetting. Some behaviors are so severe that they require permanent consequences. The legal process ran its course. Patricia was charged with aggravated trespassing and coercion. Her parents were called as witnesses. The case was legally documented to prevent any similar future attempts. 6 months later, Patricia sent me an official letter of apology. Arthur, it read, I recognize that I was terribly wrong about the house. It was an impulsive decision I made thinking of your well-being, but I understand that I had no right to make that decision for you. It was a well-written letter, probably with the help of a lawyer, but it came too late and with suspicious motives. A year after the incident, things had settled into a new normal. Stephen visited me regularly, but never with Patricia. We talked about work, family, any topic except the possibility of reconciliation. Patricia had found a job at an accounting firm. They lived in the rented apartment, struggling financially after years of free comfort in my house. Dad, Stephen said one day, don't you think Patricia has paid enough for her mistake? It wasn't a mistake, it was a crime. And crimes have permanent consequences. 2 years later, Patricia got pregnant. Stephen came to tell me the news with a mix of joy and anxiety. Dad, you're going to be a grandfather. Don't you think this baby deserves to have a united family? It was the emotional blackmail I had been expecting. Stephen, the baby will have a united family. You, Patricia, and me as a present but separate grandfather. What she won't have is Patricia living in my house after she tried to steal it from me. But Dad, doesn't the baby deserve to know the house where her father grew up? The baby will know this house when she comes to visit with me, but Patricia will not be welcome here again. When my granddaughter was born, I felt immense joy mixed with sadness for the family situation. She was beautiful, healthy, perfect. But the visits had to be at their apartment because I had stood firm in my decision. Dad, Stephen said when the baby was 3 months old, don't you want your granddaughter to grow up in the house where you raised her father? Stephen, I want what's best for my granddaughter, and what's best includes her learning that actions have consequences, that you can't hurt people without paying a price. Now, 5 years after the incident, my granddaughter comes to visit me every Saturday. She is a smart, curious, vibrant little girl. Patricia drives her to the door, but she doesn't get out. She waits in the car. Grandpa, my granddaughter asked me recently, why can't mommy come into your house? It was an innocent question, but difficult to answer without damaging the image she had of her mother. Sweetheart, I said, sometimes adults make very big mistakes. Your mommy made a mistake with me that hurt my trust very badly. And you can't forgive her? Forgiving doesn't mean things go back to how they were. It means you're not angry anymore, but you've learned to protect yourself. That conversation made me wonder if I had been too hard on Patricia. But then I would remember that afternoon when I came home and couldn't get in, when Robert answered my door as if he were the owner, and I was convinced I had done the right thing. 6 months ago, Patricia made one final attempt to get closer. She sent me a very long letter detailing all the financial problems they'd had since they left my house, how hard it was to raise a child in a small apartment, how much she missed the stability of living with me. Arthur, she wrote, I know what I did is inexcusable, but I beg you to consider your granddaughter's well-being. She deserves to grow up in a stable family environment, surrounded by the love of her whole family. It was the last reward, using my granddaughter as an emotional argument to get me to yield. But I had learned over these years that giving in to emotional blackmail only invites more of it. I responded with a brief letter. Patricia, what my granddaughter deserves is to grow up in a family that respects the rules of coexistence, that understands actions have consequences, and that doesn't use children as tools for emotional manipulation. The response, according to Stephen, left her devastated. Dad, Patricia cried for days after getting your letter. She really thought you might reconsider after all these years. Stephen, do you really believe that what Patricia did can just be forgotten? Not forgotten, but maybe forgiven after so much time. I forgave her years ago, but forgiving is not the same as trusting again. That difference between forgiveness and trust was something Stephen couldn't seem to grasp. He thought that if I had forgiven, I automatically had to allow Patricia back into my house. But I had learned that you can forgive without restoring lost privileges. Last year, for my granddaughter's birthday, they threw a party at their apartment. It was a very small space for so many people, but Patricia worked hard to make everything nice. Decorations, a homemade cake, organized games. During the party, as I watched my happy granddaughter surrounded by her little friends, Patricia approached me. Arthur, don't you think it would be nice to have her next birthday party at your house? There's more space, a yard for the kids to play. Patricia, I replied, my granddaughter can use my house when she visits me, but I am not going to host events where you are the hostess in my home. But Arthur, just once, for the sake of the little girl. For the sake of the little girl, it's better that she learns you can't do harm and then pretend nothing ever happened. The party continued, but the tension from that conversation was noticeable. The guests could sense there were family problems without knowing the details. After the party, my granddaughter came to me as I was leaving. Grandpa, wouldn't it be nicer if we could have parties at your big house? There it was again, the emotional leverage, but this time from an innocent child. Sweetheart, I told her, you can enjoy my house every Saturday when you visit. Your parents organize your parties where they live. But Mommy says your house used to be her house too. That's when I realized Patricia had been filling her head with her version of events. Honey, your mom lived in my house when I allowed her to, but then she did things that hurt me very much and I decided she couldn't live here anymore. What things did she do? Grown-up things that you'll understand when you're older. That conversation worried me because I understood Patricia was using my granddaughter to pressure me emotionally. She was teaching the child to question my decisions, to see me as the mean grandfather who doesn't forgive. The following Saturday, when my granddaughter came to visit, I asked her directly, Sweetheart, did Mommy ask you to ask me about having parties at my house? The girl looked down, confirming my suspicions. Honey, it's important you understand that you don't have to ask me for things for Mommy. When you're here, it's your time with me. You don't have to carry the grown-ups' problems. After that talk, I had a serious conversation with Stephen. Son, Patricia is using your daughter to manipulate me. That is not okay for anyone, especially not for the child. Dad, Patricia isn't manipulating anyone. She just wants the family to be united. Stephen, using a child to pressure an adult is manipulation, and it's harmful to a child's emotional development. The situation got even more complicated when my granddaughter started school, and Patricia decided to list my address as the emergency contact. The school called me one day because my granddaughter had a slight fever and they couldn't reach her parents. When I got to the school, the principal told me, "Mr. Miller, we have you down as the grandfather and emergency contact living at the same address as the parents, but we couldn't reach the mother at your home number." "Ma'am," I explained, "I don't live with the child's parents. I live alone. The parents live at a different address. But the registration form lists the same address for everyone." I realized then that Patricia had falsified information on the school enrollment, making it seem like we all lived together. It was another lie, another manipulation to create the appearance of a united family. I had to go to the school with my documents to correct the information. "Ma'am, my daughter-in-law provided false information. I live at one address, they live at another. In an emergency, you need to call the parents first." The principal was bewildered. I confronted Stephen that night. "How could you put my address down as if we all lived together?" "Dad, Patricia just thought it would be easier in case of emergencies." "Stephen, that's falsifying official information, and it creates confusion about our family's real situation." "Dad, it's not that big of a deal. It's just a school form." "No, Stephen, it's not just a form. It's part of Patricia's pattern of behavior. Manipulating information to create the reality she wants instead of accepting the reality that exists." 3 years after the lock-changing incident, the family situation had stabilized into what I called a respectful coexistence. Patricia had finally accepted she wasn't coming back to my house. Stephen had stopped asking me to reconsider. My granddaughter visited regularly without bringing messages from her parents, but the peace was short-lived. A year ago, Patricia began to have serious financial problems. The company she worked for closed a branch, and she was laid off. Stephen had to cut their expenses drastically to cover everything on one salary. "Dad," he told me, "we're going through a really tough time. The rent went up, the kids' expenses increased with school, and Patricia can't find work." "Stephen, I'm sorry to hear that, but what do you expect me to do?" "Dad, could you maybe help us out financially until Patricia finds a job?" "Do you think it's fair for me to financially support the person who tried to steal my house?" "But Dad, it's not for Patricia. It's for your granddaughter." There it was again, the emotional blackmail using the child. "Stephen, if my granddaughter needs something specific, we can talk about it. But I am not going to indirectly subsidize Patricia's life." "Dad, just until she finds work. A few months, that's all." "No, Stephen. Patricia will have to solve her employment situation, just like all responsible adults do." The financial pressure intensified her attempts to get close. Patricia started sending me cards for every special occasion: my birthday, Father's Day, Christmas. Each card came with a message about the importance of a united family and Christian forgiveness. She also began sending gifts for my house via my granddaughter. "Grandpa, Mommy sent you this plant for the garden." "Oh, Grandpa, Mommy made this jam for you." They were attempts to establish some kind of bond that would justify future requests for help. I would accept the gifts to avoid hurting my granddaughter, but I would send them back with her at the end of the visit. "Sweetheart, tell Mommy I appreciate the thought, but I don't need any gifts." The situation reached its limit one Saturday when my granddaughter was visiting and Patricia showed up at my house. "Arthur, I came to get the girl." It was an obvious lie. She always picked her up on Sunday afternoons. "Patricia, it's 2 p.m. on a Saturday. She stays until tomorrow, as always." "Something came up and I need her at home." "What came up?" "It's personal, Arthur." My granddaughter looked confused by the change in routine. "Mommy, I want to stay with Grandpa like always." "No, sweetheart, we're leaving early today." After they left, I called Stephen to understand what had happened. "Son, Patricia came to get your daughter 3 hours earlier than usual. Did something happen?" "Nothing special happened, Dad. Maybe Patricia wanted to do something with her." "Stephen, don't lie to me. Patricia came with a made-up excuse. What is she planning?" After much insistence, Stephen admitted the truth. "Dad, Patricia thought that if she came during the visit, you two could talk and maybe work things out." "Work what out?" "There's nothing to work out. Dad, the financial situation is really complicated. Patricia thought if you two talked face to face, I understood then that it had been an emotional ambush, using my granddaughter as a pretext. Patricia had interrupted my time with my granddaughter to force a conversation I had already said I didn't want. Stephen, this cannot happen again. My granddaughter's visits are sacred. Patricia cannot use those moments before her personal agendas. Dad, she just wanted to talk to you. If Patricia wants to talk to me, she can call me on the phone and make an appointment, but she is not to involve the child in her maneuvers. The next Saturday, when it was time for my granddaughter's visit, she came alone, but with a message. Grandpa, Mommy says, can you please call her because she needs to talk to you about something important? Sweetheart, I told her, you don't have to bring messages from Mommy. When you're here with me, it's our time together. But Mommy says it's important. Everything Mommy has to say can wait until you go home. During that visit, my granddaughter seemed tense, as if she were carrying the burden of convincing me of something. It was unfair for a 7-year-old child to have to deal with adult problems. At the end of the visit, as I was walking her to where Patricia was waiting in the car, my daughter-in-law rolled down the window. Arthur, can we talk for a moment? Patricia, if you have something to say to me, call me on the phone. Arthur, it's just 5 minutes. It's about the girl's future. It was the one argument I knew I couldn't ignore. 5 minutes, I said, but have the child stay in the car. Arthur, Patricia began, I know you have reasons to be angry with me, but our financial situation is very difficult. We had to move her to a public school because we can no longer afford private school. I'm sorry to hear that, but I don't see what that has to do with me. Arthur, you always said you wanted the best for your granddaughter. In your house, she could have better living conditions. There it was, the final proposal. It wasn't for Patricia to move back in, but for me to take over raising my granddaughter so she could have a better life. Patricia, are you asking me to take charge of your daughter because you can't support her, sir? It's not that I can't support her, Arthur. It's that you can give her things we can't give her right now. Like what? A big house, a yard, private school, English classes, vacations. It was an absurd proposal, disguised as a mother's sacrifice. Patricia wanted me to take on the financial burden of raising my granddaughter while she freed herself from financial responsibility. Patricia, your daughter doesn't need a big house or private school. She needs responsible parents who work to support her. You need to get a job, not look for others to take on our obligations. But Arthur, you have resources that we don't have. I have resources because I worked for 40 years to have them. You need to work too. Arthur, don't you care about your granddaughter's well-being? I care a great deal. That's why I'm not going to teach her that when you have financial problems, the solution is to find someone else to solve them for you. That conversation marked the end of any possibility of reconciliation with Patricia. She had made it clear that she saw me as a source of financial resources, not as a person who deserved respect. 6 months later, Patricia got a job at another accounting firm. Their financial situation gradually improved. The desperate calls for help stopped. The attempts at emotional manipulation became less frequent. My granddaughter continued to visit every Saturday, but she no longer brought messages or gifts from her mother. The relationship had stabilized into what it always should have been. A little girl spending time with her grandfather, with no hidden agendas involved. Now, years after the incident with the locks, I can say I made the right decision. It wasn't easy to stand firm against so much emotional pressure, but it was necessary to establish clear boundaries. My relationship with Stephen is different from what it was before, but it's honest. We no longer pretend that nothing serious happened. We talk about his work, my granddaughter, family plans, but always with the awareness that some things cannot be undone. My relationship with my granddaughter is beautiful and genuine. She has learned to value our time together without the pressures of adult conflicts. She is a happy, intelligent girl who understands that families can function in different ways. Do I regret calling the police that afternoon? No, not for a second. It was the most correct decision of my life. It gave me back control of my home and taught me that it's never too late to defend yourself. Did Patricia learn her lesson? I think she learned that manipulation doesn't work with me. Whether that makes her a better person or just a more careful one is not my responsibility. The most important lesson this whole experience taught me is that family boundaries are not optional. When someone crosses them in a serious way, you have to establish clear consequences and maintain them, no matter the emotional pressure that comes later. Was it hard to keep Patricia out of my house for all these years? Yes, especially when they started using my granddaughter as an emotional argument. But it was necessary to preserve my dignity and my home. Was the family broken after the conflict? No, it wasn't broken. It was redefined. Now it operates with clear rules, respected boundaries, and relationships based on mutual respect instead of exploitation. And you, who have listened to the end of this long and complex story, I hope you've understood that defending yourself isn't breaking the family, but protecting it from elements that would harm it. If you're living in a situation where someone is trying to take what's yours, whether it's family or not, remember my experience. The law is on your side if you are in the right. Legal documents are worth more than crocodile tears, and firm boundaries protect you better than infinite tolerance. Tell me what you think of my decision to call the police. Do you think I was too extreme? Would you have done the same? Do you think I should have forgiven Patricia after all these years? And above all, tell me what city you're listening from, because I want to know that this message about defending one's rights and personal dignity is reaching far and wide. Because in the end, what really matters isn't keeping family peace at any price, but maintaining family justice at a fair price. And sometimes that price includes difficult decisions that hurt, but ultimately heal. My house is still my house. My keys still work in my locks. My home is still my refuge, and my dignity is still intact after I prove that no one, not even family, can trample on the rights of an honest person. Thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, subscribe for more true life accounts here on Whispers of Experience.